What really emptied these Appalachian towns? They'll tell you these towns died because the coal ran out, that people just packed up and left for a better life. The official records closed the book with tidy explanations: economic downturn, industrial obsolescence, the inevitable march of progress. But that's not the whole story. It's not even the most important part. What if the official narrative is just a cover for something far more sinister? Across the ancient spine of the Appalachian Mountains, entire communities didn't just empty out, they vanished. They were hollowed out not by the loss of jobs, but by a creeping dread, a chilling series of events that defy simple explanation. The history books blame economics, but the whispers in the mountains, the stories passed down in hushed tones, they tell a different tale. They suggest that it wasn't a lack of jobs people were fleeing from. It was something else. Something in the mountains themselves. Section 1. The Anchor, Lost Cove. Deep in the remote Poplar Gorge, straddling the border of North Carolina and Tennessee, lies what's left of Lost Cove. Today, it's a ghost town, just crumbling chimneys and foundation stones being slowly swallowed by the Pisgah National Forest. But for nearly a century, Lost Cove was a living, breathing community, a testament to the resilience of the families who carved a life out of one of the most isolated places in the eastern United States. Its origins are as murky as the fogs that cling to the Nolichucky River. Some say it was founded by families fleeing the Civil War, hiding away in a place so remote the world might forget them. The first documented settler, Morgan Bailey, arrived just before the war, but the community really took off around the turn of the 20th century. The reason? The railroad. The iron tracks of the Clinchfield Railroad snaked through the gorge, and with them came the timber industry. Lost Cove became a vital logging hub. At its peak, it was a self-sustaining world of about 100 people. There were houses, a sawmill, a church, a schoolhouse. Generations of families like the Millers and the Baileys were raised there, farmers, loggers, and railroad men. And, as legend has it, they were also prolific moonshiners. Its unique spot on the state line made it a headache for law enforcement. Revenuers were often unsure which jurisdiction the cove even fell into. This ambiguity let a vital, if illicit, part of its economy flourish. The people of Lost Cove were tough. They were isolated, but the railroad was their lifeline, bringing jobs, supplies, and teachers. It was their connection to the world. But that lifeline was also their greatest vulnerability. The official story for Lost Cove's demise is simple. By the mid-20th century, the best timber was gone. The logging industry faded, and the railroad, chasing more profitable coal ventures, stopped servicing the area. Passenger service, the main way in and out, was cut. Suddenly, a community that was merely isolated became imprisoned by the very mountains that had protected it. Residents begged the state for a road, just a simple gravel track to connect them. Their request was denied. The exodus was slow, then all at once. Family by family, they packed what they could carry and hiked out, leaving the rest behind. They left for towns with roads, with jobs, with a future. In 1957, the last family walked away, and the forest began its slow, silent erasure. A few fires in 2007 consumed most of what was left, leaving only the stone bones of a forgotten life. It's a clean story, a logical one. A town lives by the railroad, and it dies by the railroad. It's the official explanation you'll find on Park Service websites. But it feels incomplete, because while Lost Cove was slowly dying, something else was happening in the sprawling, dark woods that surrounded it. Something the economic reports don't mention. Section 2. The Anomaly. The disappearance of Dennis Martin. Just south of Lost Cove, across the same dark ridges of the Appalachian chain, lies the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. On June 14, 1969, only 12 years after the last family left Lost Cove, a 6-year-old boy named Dennis Martin was on a Father's Day camping trip with his family. They were in an area called Spence Field, a beautiful, high-elevation meadow near the Appalachian Trail. Late that afternoon, Dennis and his brother decided to play a prank on the adults. They'd hide in the bushes and jump out to surprise them. The other kids went one way. Dennis, wearing a bright red shirt, went another. He was last seen by his father, playfully vanishing behind a rhododendron bush. The other children jumped out, the prank worked, and everyone laughed. But when the group regathered, Dennis was gone. He had been out of sight for no more than 5 minutes. His father's calls quickly grew frantic. They searched the immediate area. Nothing. Within hours, a massive search was underway, but a torrential downpour hampered the initial efforts. In the days that followed, the family's panic escalated into the largest search and rescue operation in the history of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. About 1,400 people, including park rangers and FBI agents, scoured 56 square miles of brutal terrain. They found nothing. Not a single trace of the boy. No footprint, no scrap of his red shirt, no sign of a struggle. It was as if the mountains had simply swallowed him. The official theories are what you'd expect. The boy wandered off and succumbed to the elements in a place home to bears and other dangers. A tragic accident. But the complete lack of evidence was baffling. How could so many searchers find absolutely nothing? Then, another story emerged. Weeks after the disappearance, a family hiking about 7 miles away reported hearing a sickening scream. A few minutes later, they saw a rough, unkempt man moving quickly through the trees, carrying something over his shoulder. At the time, law enforcement reportedly dismissed the tip, believing it was too far from the search area to be relevant. This sighting, however, fed into a darker, more whispered theory. For generations, rumors have persisted of small, isolated, and potentially hostile clans hidden in the deepest parts of the mountains, so-called feral people. While this idea is widely regarded as pure folklore and speculation by researchers, the terrifying possibility that Dennis wasn't just lost, but had been taken, took root in the local imagination. Years later, a ginseng hunter claimed to have found the skeletal remains of a small child in the area, but when he led authorities to the spot, they found nothing. The case of Dennis Martin remains officially unsolved. A 6-year-old boy vanished in minutes, surrounded by family, sparking an unprecedented search that yielded not a single clue. Was it just a tragic accident? Or does his disappearance point to that other story, the one running just beneath the surface? The economic death of towns like Lost Cove and the unnerving disappearance of a child like Dennis Martin feel like two sides of the same coin. One is a slow, documented decline. The other is a sudden, terrifying void. Section 3. The Pattern, Centralia, Pennsylvania. Far to the north, in the anthracite coal region of Pennsylvania's Appalachians, lies a town that wasn't just emptied. It was consumed from below. This is the story of Centralia, a place that became a modern ghost town, not because the jobs left, but because the ground beneath it became a literal hellscape. Like so many Appalachian towns, Centralia was built on coal, once a bustling borough of thousands. But by the mid-20th century, demand for anthracite coal had plummeted, and the town was already in decline. The official story could have ended there, but in May 1962, something happened that would seal Centralia's fate in the most terrifying way imaginable. Preparing for Memorial Day, the town council decided to clean up the local landfill in an abandoned strip mine pit by setting the trash on fire. On May 27th, volunteer firefighters did just that. They lit the fire, let it burn, then doused the visible flames. But they didn't get all of it. Deep in the pit, an unsealed opening allowed embers to creep into the labyrinth of abandoned coal mines that snaked for miles beneath the town. The fire had found a near-endless seam of anthracite coal. For years, no one grasped the scale of the problem. But the fire was spreading. By the late 1970s, the town above began to feel the heat. In 1979, the mayor and gas station owner discovered the gasoline in his underground tanks was a shocking 172 degrees Fahrenheit. The ground grew warm. Steam and toxic gases, including lethal carbon monoxide, began venting from cracks in the earth. Then, on Valentine's Day in 1981, the true horror became clear. A 12-year-old boy, Todd Domboski, was walking in his grandmother's backyard when the ground collapsed beneath him. A 150-foot deep sinkhole opened up, and he was swallowed by hot steam, only saving himself by grabbing a tree root as his cousin pulled him to safety. This was the tipping point. The town was actively trying to kill its residents. In 1983, Congress allocated over $42 million for a voluntary relocation program. Most residents took the buyout. House by house, the town was dismantled. In 1992, the governor invoked eminent domain, condemning every remaining property. The U.S. Postal Service revoked its zip code in 2002. The official story is that Centralia was emptied by a mine fire, an industrial accident. But this is no ordinary fire. It has been burning for over 60 years and could burn for another 250. It is a wound in the earth that will not heal. It didn't just drive people away. It devoured their homes, their streets, their history. It stands as a stark, smoking monument to a force far more sinister than a simple economic downturn. So we have an isolated town in North Carolina that withers away, its end shadowed by a child's terrifying disappearance. We have a Pennsylvania coal town consumed by an underground fire that will burn for centuries. These stories are unsettling on their own, but placed side by side, a disturbing pattern emerges. The official stories, it seems, are never the whole story. If you're finding this as unnerving as I am, take a moment to subscribe and hit that like button. It helps us dig deeper into these forgotten histories. We're about to connect these events to one of Appalachia's most infamous legends, and you won't want to miss it. Section 4. The Harbinger, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Our pattern now takes us to Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Unlike Lost Cove or Centralia, Point Pleasant didn't become a ghost town. But for 13 terrifying months, between November 1966 and December 1967, it became the epicenter of a phenomenon so bizarre, it's now a cornerstone of American folklore. This is a story about a community being haunted by a possible omen of disaster. The events began in the TNT area, a semi-abandoned former World War II munitions plant. On the night of November 15, 1966, two young couples were driving through the area when their headlights fell on something impossible. Standing by the road was a man-sized creature, nearly 7 feet tall, with huge wings folded against its back. Its most terrifying feature was its eyes, two enormous, glowing red discs. Panicked, the driver slammed on the gas, but the creature unfurled its massive wings and took flight, easily keeping pace with their car as it topped 100 miles per hour. It followed them to the city limits before disappearing. The next day, the Point Pleasant Register headline read, "Couples see man-sized bird. Creature. Something." A local reporter dubbed it the Mothman, and the name stuck. This wasn't an isolated incident. Over the next 13 months, over 100 people reported seeing the same thing. A tall, winged, humanoid figure with hypnotic, glowing red eyes. Paranormal investigator John Keel documented the sightings, along with other strange phenomena like bizarre lights and malfunctioning electronics. Skeptics suggested misidentifications of a sandhill crane or an owl, but witnesses were adamant. What they saw was not a bird. Then, on December 15, 1967, 13 months after the sightings began, the story took a devastating turn. During evening rush hour, the Silver Bridge, connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio, was packed with traffic. Suddenly, with a sound like a gunshot, a single eye bar in the suspension chain failed. The entire structure collapsed into the icy Ohio River. 46 people died. In the aftermath, a chilling realization dawned. The Mothman sightings, once so frequent, suddenly stopped. This led to the sinister theory that has defined the legend ever since. Was the creature a demon drawn to suffering, or was it a supernatural harbinger, trying to warn the people of Point Pleasant of the doom to come? The official cause of the collapse was a tiny stress fracture in a single piece of steel, an engineering failure. But that doesn't explain the 13 months of terror that came before it. Section 5. Connecting the dots, a pattern of mystery. So we have 3 towns, 3 stories, all rooted in the vast, ancient wilderness of the Appalachians. On the surface, they seem unrelated. In Lost Cove, we get the classic ghost town narrative, economic collapse. But it happens against a backdrop of impenetrable woods, the same kind of woods where a boy named Dennis Martin would later vanish without a trace. In Centralia, it's an industrial disaster, a mine fire. But this is no ordinary accident. It's a subterranean inferno that has literally swallowed a town, a force so persistent it feels almost malevolent. And in Point Pleasant, it's a tragedy of structural failure, a bridge collapse. But that official story is preceded by 13 months of well-documented high strangeness, of a terrifying winged apparition that seemed to portend the exact disaster that followed. Economics, accidents, engineering. These are the neat, tidy explanations. They are logical, rational, and they let us sleep at night. But they don't account for the anomalies: the boy who vanished, the fire that won't die, the monster that came before the collapse. Are these just coincidences? A collection of unrelated tragedies and weird tales? Or is there a common thread here? When you look at them together, it's hard to ignore the possibility that the official story is a convenient simplification, a way to paper over a deeper, more disturbing truth about this ancient mountain range. Section 6. Exploring the sinister cause. To understand what might be happening, we have to look into the deep well of Appalachian folklore. These mountains are among the oldest on Earth, and they've been accumulating stories for a long, long time. The pattern we see in our stories is echoed in countless other tales of disappearances and strange phenomena. Consider the Bennington Triangle in Vermont, on the northern edge of the Appalachians. Between 1945 and 1950, at least 5 people vanished there under bizarre circumstances. An experienced outdoorsman disappeared, a college student went for a hike and was never seen again, and an 8-year-old boy vanished from his family's farm. In each case, massive searches turned up nothing. These events offer a terrifying parallel to the disappearance of Dennis Martin. Or think of the Brown Mountain Lights in North Carolina, not far from Lost Cove. For centuries, people have reported mysterious, glowing orbs rising from the mountainside. Native American legend attributes them to the spirits of Cherokee women searching for warriors lost in a great battle. Scientists have proposed theories from swamp gas to car headlights, but no single explanation has ever stuck, as the lights were documented long before cars existed. Then there is the folklore itself. Cherokee legends tell of the Tzul-Kalu, a slant-eyed giant, and the Yunweit Sunsti, or little people. More chillingly, they tell of the moon-eyed people, a race of pale humanoids who could only see at night and were said to have been driven from the mountains. This is the cultural soil from which the feral people theory in the Dennis Martin case grows, an idea that taps into a primal fear that we are not alone in the woods. These aren't just campfire tales. They're expressions of a long-standing relationship between the people of Appalachia and the land, a relationship built on respect, but also on fear. The land provides, but it also takes. It hides things. Is it so hard to believe, then, that a place like Centralia, with its unquenchable fire, might be seen as something more than an accident? Or that a place like Lost Cove, so profoundly isolated, was simply reclaimed by a wilderness that is actively hostile to human settlement? The official stories of economic decline are human stories, but the pattern of mystery suggests there may be another story running alongside it. A story of strange lights, impossible creatures, and people who step behind a bush and are never seen again. This is the possibility that what emptied these towns wasn't just a lack of opportunity, but the presence of something else. In the end, we're left with 2 competing narratives. The first is the one of record, a story of boom and bust, of coal seams running dry and railroads changing course. It's a clean, straightforward account of social and economic forces, and in many ways, it's true. People did leave Appalachia for better jobs. Towns did wither when their industries failed. But that second narrative, the one whispered in the hollows, is still there. It's woven from the threads of the inexplicable. It asks us to consider that a dying town and a vanished person might be connected by more than just geography. It suggests a burning mine and a winged omen could be different manifestations of the same ancient, unsettling energy. We can look at the rusted car still lying in a ditch in Lost Cove and see a symbol of economic abandonment. Or we can see the relic of a family that fled something they could no longer live beside. We can look at the smoking fissures of Centralia and see an industrial accident. Or we can see a wound that will never close. We can remember the 46 victims of the Silver Bridge and mourn an engineering failure. Or we can wonder about the red-eyed creature that watched from the shadows in the months before the fall. The official story gives us answers. The other story only gives us questions. And maybe that's its power. It reminds us that there are still places in this world that are not fully known, places where the veil between our reality and another is thin. What really emptied these Appalachian towns? The answer may be darker and far stranger than we can ever imagine.